Welcome to the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast with your host, Jody Betty.
Welcome to the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast. Today we are speaking with a dear friend of mine who is also a wonderful podcast host, Elaine Lindsay. Elaine, this is a reversal of roles. Usually it's me on your podcast. So welcome and thank you so much for coming on and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, it absolutely is a reversal of roles. I'm getting used to wearing two different hats. So hopefully, I will give you what you need today.
I'm sure you will. As you know, I'm not a big 20 questions. I just want you to share with what you want to share. I want you to talk about your podcast a little bit because I know that's, a huge part of your life and it's a wonderful podcast. It's Suicide, Zen, and Forgiveness. I will post the links on the story notes. And so why don't you just tell me about yourself?
Okay, so I am, and for those who can't see us, I have very deep turquoise hair. I'm 68 years old. My name's Elaine Lindsay. I've been online forever, and I have gone through a couple of things. Let's put it that way. I have been doing the Suicide Zen Forgiveness podcast originally since 2018 is when I started it. I got very, very serious about it in January of 2021 and have been doing it weekly since. The point of Suicide Zen Forgiveness is to encourage empathy and offer hope to people who suffer suicide loss, ideation, and mental health, because I want to end the stigma, the shame, and the silence around these topics. We have to normalize conversation because we're losing too damn many people.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
the reason for the podcast, I lost my dear friend Andrea when we were 16 years old. It was unfortunately rocked me so far off my center that I spent the next 4 years basically drunk or stoned, and very often in the cemetery. I was looking for answers that, of course, never came. We had no idea why it happened. To this day, I have no idea why it happened. However, I've learned in the past 2 years that I, in fact, regressed to about 12 years of age and left all concept of maturity or growing or anything by the wayside. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. I didn't want to be in this life where this was. And part of that is because what people didn't know, I had suicidal ideation since I was a little kid. I It was always an option on the table. If I burnt my toast or if something horrible happened, it didn't matter. One of the options was always, well, I can just end my life. And I didn't know that wasn't normal until I was about 12 or 13 and I started volunteering at a mental institution. I started to see real life. And I learned a lot of bizarre things over the years, but I learned first and foremost to keep my mouth shut, to never tell anybody what I was thinking, because in the 60s, when I was a kid, you could be locked up. They could do all kinds of things to you. I mean, there was even a song, for God's sake, when I was 12 or 13 called They're Coming to Take You Away, Ha Ha. Hee hee, ho ho, to the funny farm, where
Oh my
life is
God.
beautiful all the time. Yeah, bizarre, bizarre song. I know in this politically correct climate, and for the better, we don't do songs like that anymore. No, that kept me quiet for almost 60 years. However, I'll get into the nuts and bolts. When I was 20 years of age, just 4 years after Andrea died, on the 20th of March, 1976. I found myself on a highway here in Ottawa. I was pulled over by the police because we didn't have any lights on the car. My dimmer switch had shorted out. I had been to the police station downtown to pick up a friend who had been picked up for drinking and driving. I was really pissed at him for being an ass, but I was also almost 7 months pregnant. I got up and got dressed in the dark because it was 2 in the morning. I was, well, besides being really angry, I was an angry young person at that point. I had to get out of my car after I explained to the policeman why we didn't have lights. He made me turn it on anyway. And when I pulled on the lights, the car died. We were in the right-hand lane of the highway because the snowbanks were so high we couldn't pull off. I said, "Look, you stalled it. You started." He said, "I don't have booster cables." So, well, then go get some. Right around the corner, just quarter-mile down the road, there was Ahmed's Sunoco. So just before he left to get the booster cables, I asked him to set up some flares because we were on a curve in the highway going up a hill. And I commented to the guy in my car, "Oh my God, that's Andrea's grave right there." When the policeman came back, he pulled his car up to mine. He raised the hood and I raised mine. And then he told me he didn't know how to use booster cables. He's 6 feet tall. I'm barely 5'2". Like I said, I was already angry. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm freezing. It's like, I don't know, it was like 30 below Fahrenheit. There was nothing around this area. There were no street lights, like nothing. It was almost pitch black except for the glare of the snow. Anyway, I got him to come between the cars. He was on the side closest to the snowbank. I put the booster cables on one side of the battery and I showed him what I was doing with the other one. And then it gets really foggy because I think he looked up. And the next thing I know, I just feel pain and I'm flying through the air, which seemed so bizarre at the time. And as I flew through the air, and people can take this for what it is, I felt someone put the hood up on the fur coat I happened to have on. And when I hit that highway, thanks to that fur coat, my head didn't split like a melon. The rest of me, however, wasn't so lucky. The engine of my Mustang tore through my leg, taking half of my leg from below the knee on my left leg, vertically up 3/4 of the way up my thigh. Both my legs were broken in multiple places. I did fracture my skull. I had multiple internal injuries. And as I lay on that highway, I couldn't figure out what was touching my shoulder. Turns out it was my left foot. All I could feel was, you know, when you get a blister and you break it and there's that sharp, like burning pain?
Hmm.
Imagine that from your ankle to your hip. It felt like I had a giant blister, like somebody had torn the skin off me. Little did I know. As I lay there, some lady appeared from I don't know where, and she took my hand, which was bizarrely stuck up in the air. My right arm was jutting up. I had no idea why until the woman took my hand. And I realized it was agony. And I kept asking her to, and sorry, I was so rude. Effing let go of my hand, lady. I was not being very nice. And in between let go of me, it was somebody punch me, just knock me out. What I didn't realize was I was coming in and out of consciousness and I was bleeding badly from my femoral artery. The bonus was it was 30 below, and that kind of slowed things down. I weirdly had put on clogs when I left the house because I figured I wasn't going to be gone long. Well, the clogs flew off on the highway. And as it turns out, the young man whose car hit my car, which hit me, which hit the police car, he ran up to a restaurant, probably an eighth or so of a mile away, and woke the people up to call an ambulance. Because back in 76, there were no cell phones, there were no pagers.
Right.
As a matter of fact, there weren't even paramedics. The ambulance drivers were just that. They had first aid, that's all.
Really?
Yeah, there were no
Wow.
paramedics back then. And I feel bad for them now. They got a 2x4 and had to maneuver my leg and tie it to the other leg to try and staunch the bleeding and to get me on the gurney. I had no idea of just how much damage there was to me. I was more concerned about the car. We loved that Mustang. I was so worried that my husband was going to be upset, and I kept asking them, "Is the car okay?" And somebody put some of the hood up on the side of my head so I couldn't see. I had actually landed with my head facing the way, like back towards where we'd come, and my feet were the other way. So I don't know if I spun or how I got that way, but I was 2 lanes over on the highway.
Wow, Jesus.
A couple of trucks, thank God, stopped, didn't hit me. They kind of made I guess a barrier between me and the other traffic. It's the highway going out of town, going south, and there's a lot of commercial traffic on that road. Uh, the policeman, meanwhile, was standing banging on his car. He didn't call the ambulance. He didn't he didn't even like radio in, to the best of my knowledge. I now know he was in shock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he did dive into the snowbank and save himself. I'm the only one in the accident who got hurt. Everybody else, including the guy in my car, who thank God for him was drunk, were all fine. The guy who hit my car, he was a little banged up, but he ended up being okay. It took them a long time to get there and a longer time to get me into the ambulance. When we got to the hospital, there was, I don't know, just a flurry of people. I don't remember much of that whole night, but the next 5 weeks, every week they came in and told me something else. You have some internal injuries. Oh, we've taken the baby. Your legs are broken. Your skull is fractured. Oh, and your arm's tied to you because it was an anterior dislocation, blah, blah, blah. All I knew was I felt like a mummy. They had my arm tied to me, and both my legs were in casts. One of the casts, the one on my left leg, had this weird like window cut in it. And every day they'd come into my room and they'd roll the bed flat so I couldn't see what they were doing. And they'd do something in this window. I didn't feel any of it, so I had no idea what they were doing. It drove me crazy because over the next month, there was this smell that started in the room, and it was just driving me nuts. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't identify the smell, but it was horrible. It was so horrible. And on the 5th week, they were prepping me for more surgery, and there was a plastic surgeon. I don't think I realized he was a plastic surgeon because I never asked. about that. There were so many doctors that came and went all the time. But in that 5th week, the nurse came in as usual to do her thing, and she put her tray on me and put a pillow on me, and then she got called to the desk. And she had already opened some of the tape on my leg, but she hadn't rolled me down flat on the bed.
Oh no.
So,
So
of
now you
course,
can see.
I opened the cast. And then I left mentally. I just went away because in there wasn't a leg, there was just pulp, pieces of I don't know what. And I couldn't quite figure out what I was seeing. And I guess some people's reaction to shock is they just leave. I got delirious. I ran a high fever for about 3 days before I came back. And I came back. I don't know who came back. Here I was, as I said earlier, I was basically 12 years old. So mentally, I didn't have the capacity to understand everything that was going on. I really didn't. And I just let them keep drugging me and trying to keep me, I guess, calm and civil because I was a bit of a brat. It took 5 years for them to put my legs back together. I have no kneecaps. I have no cartilage in either leg. And I basically, my father told me to tell people that I got bit by a shark because it's a better story. And it explains the big hole in my leg. This all sounds like it was really horrible, and it was. Sadly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We'll go kind of quickly through the rest of this piece because it comes from that surgery. It comes from the accident. Because after the accident, I could no longer ski. I could no longer skate or ride horses or my bike or any of those things. And I started putting on weight, and it made me crazy. Crazier, I guess. I never liked me to start off with, but before the accident, I said to you I was 5'2". I thought I was just big blue eyes and long legs for 5'2". And now I was just big blue eyes. I didn't have those legs anymore. And it left someone that had no self-confidence totally broken. And I developed, I guess, a defensive posture, which was to absolutely hate me with a deep hatred. I did nothing right. I wouldn't talk to my worst enemy the way I talked to me.
I
Didn't
understand.
learn that for a really long time. But, in spite of me, life went on, and life was not all bad. Okay, things were good. Sadly, I ruined my marriage because of this. I couldn't come to terms with what had happened to me. My husband didn't have a problem with it. He's a good person. But unfortunately, I trashed that. In 1979, I met someone else, and I ended up getting married in 1980. Married and divorced in 1 month. It's a good trip. Had no intentions of ever getting married again, but when it came up, it was like, okay, well, let's do this. 2 years later, we had a little boy. Now, I already had a little girl. She was 2 years old at the time of my accident. I had a little girl the year after, when she was 18 months old, and my daughter Shannon died. That was the year before my accident.
Oh my God.
Being a teenager was not the greatest time for me. But in 1982, after having my son, I had put on an awful lot of weight, and I hated the person I saw in the mirror. I got to the point where I only used a hand mirror to do my makeup because I refused to look in a mirror. And I had found out about this vertical banded gastroplasty. thinking that surgery would be the answer. I could lose this weight, I could be me again. I guess that's what I thought. And it's very interesting. The universe gives us what we want. The universe will give us whatever we look for, whether it's good or it's bad. So one Sunday, we're with my family and our two kids, and we go to brunch at our favorite restaurant. And I went to the washroom, and this woman came out of a stall and she looked at me in the mirror. She said, "Oh my God, you are so beautiful. Why are you fat?"
Oh my God.
That was what I wanted to hear. That was the universe giving me what I was looking for. I was looking for the excuse to go ahead and have this surgery. My whole family was super against it. Nobody wanted this to happen. It was experimental. They were all freaked out. And I set it all up. I jumped through all the hoops for the doctors. I did the psychological testing. They said I was ready. I even lost 20 pounds before the surgery. They said it would be about 3 weeks. I'd be in the hospital for a week, 2 more weeks convalescing at home. You had to have a tube in your side to feed through because you couldn't have anything by mouth for those first 3 weeks, which I totally understood that. Just before the surgery, I had been made a manager with the company I was with, and we went to a convention in Vegas. I was on top of the world when it came to where I was in business and what was going to happen after, and I had it all set up. I had someone who was going to watch the kids for the 3 weeks. I made sure that, my parents would have them on the weekends. Everything would just hum along, and 3 weeks later, they would take the tube out of my side and life would go on. And I would be eating in a different way and I would lose weight and I would finally be happy with me. So I thought. Unfortunately, what none of us knew, this doctor was already being investigated because he'd killed 2 people with
What?
this surgery. And there was only 30, well, counting me, there were 37 people in the cohort of this experimental surgery. We're never going to know what happened September 13th, 1983 in the OR because he falsified OR reports. There's 2 or 3 reports for the next 3 surgeries that I had to have in 3 weeks. I had the surgery, and because he was so worried about his job, he covered up what had happened. It turns out that he'd caused a gastric leak. He
Oh
had
my
been holding
God.
the it's called a trocar. It's supposed to make 2 circles front and back. Well, however it was held, it didn't make a circle on the back. It made an oval, which meant my stomach was leaking into my abdomen from the 13th of September. I went home, I believe, on the 19th, and I only lasted for 17 hours. I couldn't have anything by mouth, and I didn't go home with anything for pain. I thought I would, be penitent about having this surgery and, suck it up and I'd be strong because, I'm already pissing off the family. So here, I'll do this. It got to the point where I could neither sit nor stand nor lie down, and this weird pain was in my left shoulder blade, which made no sense because they were working in my stomach. Like, what is that? Well, I now know that is a gastric leak. That's a symbol of a gastric leak is left shoulder tip pain. Anyway, we phoned the hospital, and part of the problem was the surgery was experimental. So none of the other doctors knew what the hell to do or even what was involved. And a lot of the nurses were they kind of looked at you weird because it was experimental and, the whole thing was bizarre. Also, some of the nurses in that hospital already knew that 2 people were dead. So they didn't
Wow.
want to say anything to me. We went to emergency. The doctor checked me out. He gave me a shot for pain. He gave my husband a prescription that my husband would be able to crush up in order to put through the tube in my side. And we were just getting ready to go home. I'd gotten dressed and I opened the curtain, and the resident from my surgery came walking through Emerge. And my husband said he didn't know who the guy was, he didn't know what had happened, but the look on the guy's face when he saw me terrified my husband. He said, I just knew something was really, really wrong. And all hell broke loose. He went and the doctor came back and said to me, okay, I'm sorry, you can't leave. It's like, what do you mean? No, no, you gave my husband the
I'm
prescription.
on the
I'm
way
going
out
home.
the door.
I'm going home. He said, you can't leave. We're going to take you for a test. What test? What are you talking about? And they rush me down to X-ray and they give me what's called a gastrographin swallow. It's like drinking petroleum.
Oh God.
It was awful. And it was now midnight. And they brought in this Dr. Sapala, who is the head of X-ray. I know them all now.
Yeah, I
It's
bet.
much later. But he did these tests and he came back to me after and he said, there's been a problem. We believe there's a gastric leak. We're going to take you back to surgery. And the doctor who did this came to me and he said, oh, go on, tell me you ate something or drank something, didn't you? And I said, how can you even say that? I fought to have this surgery. I went against my entire family. I jumped through all your hoops. I went to the psychologist and everything. Why would I do that? That doesn't even make sense. What I didn't know, that's the first incident of gaslighting in my life.
Right, yeah,
He was trying to cover his tracks by getting me to believe I had done it.
of course.
Now, that next morning, it was the 21st of September, they took me back to surgery. Again, there are, I don't know, 2 or 3 OR reports for that surgery. We don't know what he did. I know what he didn't do. He didn't fix the gastric leak. Other doctors have supposed that he had wrapped everything in omentum. It's inside your body, it's kind of like glue. And he just wrapped everything and made a pouch to try and keep, I guess, his handiwork or not so handiwork all together. But what it did was make a perfect area for infection to
Oh my
percolate.
God.
2 days later, I was spiking such a high fever, they didn't know what to do. On the third day after the second surgery, I could hardly breathe. I was having a terrible time. And they got my husband to hold me over the tray table on the bed while they cut into my left side and put in a chest tube. My lung had collapsed. I had an abscess on my left lung. We still have no idea how that came about or what any of it really was because there was so much garbage in those reports. We also only know about the reports is because we had to go to court later. However, excuse me, a couple of days after that, it's now my daughter's birthday. It's 6 o'clock on September 28th, 6 a.m., and they take me for another test. When I come out of the test, Dr. Sapala came and said, I'm really sorry, but he's going to have to go in again. I said, no, sorry, no, not happening. He's like, Elaine, there's no choice here. And the actual doctor, Freeman, came by and he said, I'm going to operate again because if I don't, you're dead by dinner.
What?
Very subtle, very kind gentleman.
Oh my God, I would have snapped.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what I said. I did, however, get a nurse to go get a phone And I called my husband and I called my father. And I said, if either of you signs a release form for me to have surgery, you're dead to me. And they're both dead to me because thank God they signed the forms because I was dying. And I just didn't want to be in surgery on my daughter's birthday. She was
Right.
a little kid. And
Yeah.
this little kid, when she was 2, she went through this all when I was crushed between the cars. She lived 5 years of mom being this thing in a wheelchair in the corner that you couldn't touch. And now here we are. She's going on 9 years old, and it's happening again.
My God, how traumatic.
Exactly. Exactly. So my mom and dad were taking her out for dinner, and my husband was at the hospital. This one's worse because now there's 3 OR reports. They don't say a hell of a lot about the areas that were actually done. He tried to say he took my appendix out, but turns out somebody else did that later in 1992. So either I grew another one or who knows. In the first 15 minutes of being on the table, my heart stopped. I now understand he was seriously relieved because it meant he could now undo everything he'd done in me and cover it up for the morbidity rounds. So he could just say, whatever happened, the dead body's there. Nah, something happened. It wasn't him. However, as he was tearing stuff apart and undoing the vertical banded gastroplasty, the residents were getting my heart started. I don't suppose he was very impressed with any of them.
I guess not.
He had to stop what he's doing. I know he was far enough along that the remnants of what is in there are just bits and pieces of steel from the machine. The actual vertical banded gastroplasty is no more. There's not the holes, or it's all just scar tissue. But he, I don't know. I don't know what he was doing. I was asleep. At one point, I stopped breathing. So they had to get me breathing again. And when they did, he brought in a thoracic surgeon and he had him divert my esophagus out my neck. So they slit my neck open and they took my esophagus and sewed it to the outside of my neck.
What?
So that I guess he thought it was the one way to let everything heal in the stomach. So I guess what tissue that you cut into and sew up and do things with more than once ends up becoming what they call friable. It's just like jello. You can only, tear people apart and sew them up so many times before it's hard to do again. So
Right.
they couldn't close me. They used what they called Macaulay bridges and just packed everything and left me open. So it meant I had to be repacked a few times every day. But when they finally got me out of the surgery, I went up to a ward, to ICU, for 11 days. I had so many machines and so many hoses coming out of me. There wasn't enough suction attached on the wall to put them all there, and they had to use gravity machines so that they had the tubes going to the floor. I had what they call Jackson Pratts. They look like little hand grenades from thinner, like hoses coming out of you. It's some kind of drain. And then on my right side, there was a big hose and a bag off that. I called him Hugo because you go where I go. And Hugo went with me for 7.5 months. On my neck, they just put a little tube with air that was trying to take the saliva, because something I didn't know until then, saliva is like battery acid. It was eating all my skin on my chest as this hole dripped. So over the 11 days, this was all red and blistered, and my whole chest wall was just a mess. The other tubes were on the right, and of course, my J tube, the tube that I fed through, the tube I was supposed to have for 3 weeks. He lived with me for more than 13 months, and he only came out because the head of emergency, I had gone back in because it had fallen out again. They do that a lot. And he said, I just can't keep cutting you open because it's in the small bowel. And in order to put it back in, you have to cut another hole. You can't always put it back in the one that you had before.
Right.
So a few times a month, they would cut me open again, put in a new tube. The stopcocks would fall out sometimes or whatever. I mean, they were a pain. But all of that was just, I felt like when Doc Ock from Spider-Man. He had all the tentacles, I had all the tubes and all the crap.
Tubes, right, yeah.
When they got me up to a ward, though, there were a bunch of nurses, and two things. The nurses, they knew I had had nothing by mouth for over a month now. That went on for 7.5 months. But at a month, my lips were dry and cracked, and they put glycerin swabs on them all the time, but that didn't help. And I was feeding through the tube in my side, except for the times that the cafeteria sent up strawberry milkshakes with the pits in them.
Oh, God.
It's just about the size of a J tube. So you put a bolus of strawberry milkshake in your J tube and you're going right back down to the OR so
Oh,
that they
my
can
God.
cut you a new hole, because that one's not going to work anymore. I laugh now, but at the time it wasn't funny. It was just sore.
It's a medical nightmare.
Absolutely. And the nurses, they wanted to do something nice for me. So one night, about a month in, one of the nurses came at the end of visitors, and she said, okay, we have a surprise for you. So just wait. We've got to go do a few things. We'll be back. Okay. They came back with a popsicle.
Oh, my God.
I was in heaven, but one of the nurses thought, well, her throat slit. If we put a bunch of towels around her throat and she has a popsicle, it's going to come out the hole, and we can just put the towels in the laundry. It can't go anywhere because my esophagus is out my neck. So that's what we did. And one popsicle led to every single night. It was like, yes, I love that you're visiting me. Get out. Please go now. Don't go away mad. Just go.
Yeah.
And we thought it was pretty funny. But a couple of things about our bodies. Okay. Our bodies try to heal themselves no matter what happens. And they're pretty damn good at it.
Yes.
So in all that time, those first 2 months, my esophagus was trying to heal itself, which meant a little bit of the popsicle stuff got through. And Hugo betrayed me, because in Hugo, it was a weird kind of browny, purpley something color, and the doctor was livid. But I think he thought he could use it against me, because it showed him that I didn't do as I was told. I didn't tell him it was the nurses that gave it to me, because at that point it didn't matter. I just wanted to have a little relief.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, a month, yeah, it must have been a month and a couple of weeks. One of the nurses went and brought the stoma therapist. I didn't even know what a stoma therapist was, but she was the person who did colostomy bags and taught
Right.
people that had a colostomy how to place a bag, how to use them, and what all that was about. And she showed me how to wear a colostomy bag on my neck. It only stuck there for 2, sometimes 3 days, but it allowed some of my skin to heal. And we could just empty the bag from the
Right.
popsicle. So I still got my popsicles until, it went through and I got in trouble. I got to go home in November some point for Christmas. And my mom and dad were just trying desperately to make things kind of normal. So my mother said, "Well, we're at the dinner table so I can watch everybody eat because I can't eat. And I
Oh
have this
God.
colostomy bag on my neck, which, let me tell you, is a bitch to accessorize. Nothing goes with clear plastic. Just not classy at all." My mom says, "Well, we'll just use the blender and we'll mush everything up so you can drink it." It's like, Mom, that's disgusting. We're
Yeah.
not doing that. And none of the rest of the family's going to have to sit through dinner listening to me suck through a straw. That's just awful. They were trying their best to make the best of a bad situation. Nobody knew that this was going to follow me for the rest of my life. Nobody had a clue. But what we now know about bariatric surgery and all of those things, you end up with malabsorption and malnutrition. And it turns out he cut my vagus nerve.
Oh my God. Was
So,
he drunk?
no, he's just so full of himself.
Got God complex.
Yeah. And the nurses later told us they call him Dr. Nick because he nicked everything he touched.
Oh my God.
Over the next 20 or 30 years, everyone we know has come into contact with someone he's hurt, which is really saying something because there's a lot of doctors here.
Geez, how does he still have a license? Like, how is he not
Now
being
he
sued?
doesn't now, but the Canadian Medical Malpractice Association, well, doctors pay a lot.
Yes.
And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah.
But, our whole family was basically dragged through the mud. They threatened to take my father's house because family law in Canada, if you go through a civil suit, your whole family's involved and the defense gets to do what they want.
Really?
Yeah, I
Oh
will
my
say
God.
we believe money changed hands and that's why we lost the suit. But it was a learning experience for all of us. And I don't want to kind of end on a draggy note for your listeners because it's not like that. You know me. I'm pretty happy go lucky.
Absolutely.
The reason for that, in 1997, by this point, I had found out that I had been given blood from the prisons in the US. And I was lucky I didn't have HIV, but I did have hepatitis C.
Okay.
And that came from during the surgery. He left 6.5 feet of packing in my side in another one of the holes. We think it might have been a Jackson Pratt, but the VON, the Visiting Nursing Association lady, was there with my husband. They had got me up and dressed and put me in the bathroom. They just walked out of the bathroom and I looked down, and from my waist down, there was blood everywhere. My side had opened up. I had been complaining for about a week of some pain, some tenderness on my side. It was
Mm-hmm.
just one of the other scars he had left there from all those drains. When the nurse called him, He said, "Well, did you get it out?" "Okay, well, I guess I see you next week."
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I would have been with a baseball bat at this point in time next time I saw him.
I couldn't have held up a baseball bat.
Oh my God.
I couldn't hold myself up. You know, I basically was chronically ill for the next 20 or so years. I lived on onshore, the protein drink,
Yes.
for well over a decade because I couldn't swallow. They kept doing something they call dilatations. They put what looked like big bullets down your throat, and the bullets just keep getting bigger because they're trying to re-widen your throat.
Right.
Um, I have a pouch here, which is very elegant. I whoop like a crane. Water gets stuck there, rice, can't eat sushi. There's certain little things, that get stuck. But all in all, it is what it is. I was getting really fed up, and later on, I have insulin dependent diabetes. I got cirrhosis from everything they'd done, and last year's gift was chronic pancreatitis.
Oh my God.
It's basically over 40 years later, and I am still paying for this. So I think people need to think twice before they do anything life changing that is not yet well documented, that they don't have long term studies for. Because, this has been a 40-year saga of horrific gifts. Oh, I forgot osteoporosis too.
Oh my God.
I got that when I found out when I fell getting out of the car. I walk with a cane quite often. And I fell getting out of the car, and my right arm shattered, my humerus. When the orthopedic surgeon looked into it, we found that I have very serious osteoporosis, and I break pretty easy.
Oh, Jesus.
Anyway, let's get
How
to
did
the
you maintain your mental health during all this? Because I would have I don't even know what I would have done.
mental health. We're talking to Looney Tunes here. I don't think first of all, I was not a very good person. I was super defensive. I was in pain 24/7. And I had pardon me, but shitload of drugs, always.
Yeah.
I took enough drugs for an entire football team. Okay. And I'm talking morphine and Demerol and you name it. I had it. In 1997, it was just starting winter. There was a little bit of snow on the ground. My son was, I think, about 13. He was in Air Cadets. And my daughter had come to visit with our first granddaughter. She's about 3. She's dancing between my daughter and I. We had left the restaurant. We were walking through the parking lot, going to our car to drop my son off at Air Cadets. And as we walked past the cars, one of them started backing out. We were right behind the
Wow.
car, and the man was looking the other way. He was looking ahead of him. So I knocked on the back of the car, like, hey, people here, just wanting him to stop. We kept walking, and the next thing I know, this giant human comes barreling out of his car. You effing bitch, blah, blah, blah. And he's screaming at us. Can't you people wait and wait? Like, just insane. And I'm thinking, like, what the hell? My daughter said, there's a child here. And I said, you're an asshole. Like, get in your car. Yeah, it's me. My daughter's mom. Don't say that. And so we walk up to our car, which was, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 cars past. And I don't know where each of us was. My daughter was, I guess, trying to put the little one in the car. And then my daughter screamed, and I looked up, and he had driven up to where we were. He turned the car in towards my kids and hit the gas. So I jumped in front of his car. He wasn't going very fast. He's in a parking lot. I'm figuring there's not much he can do. as I land on the hood of his car because he hit my legs, which we already know are not in good nick. And he backs up with me on his car. But there's all these people in the parking lot that surround the car and make him stop. He gets out and he is a mountain of a man. We find out later he'd been drinking at the restaurant. He was in a Knights of Columbus group with the policemen who came to help.
Oh my God.
But here's the weird part. They've called paramedics. There's an ambulance has arrived. My doctor happens to be in that plaza, and somebody went and got him. And he comes like, oh my God, the one person, please tell me he didn't hit her legs. I can hear him thinking, oh God, I'm in trouble. This hurts. But I'm so focused on the fact that I'm overweight and I can't let these paramedics help me up. Even at this point, I am so focused on the wrong damn thing because I hate me so much. I can't imagine anything worse than the shame that I'm going to feel, which is just ridiculous. But I fought with the paramedics, and they're like, lady, just let us help you.
Yeah.
They get me in the ambulance, and as I lie on that stretcher, it's like, oh my God. Oh my God, you idiot. And all I can think is, what the hell? What the hell is wrong with me? And then my fingers pointing in my face. You're the common denominator here. Thinking, is life just crap? Is that all it is? Is that just going from one crappy situation to another? Leaving out all the good bits, like my kid and yada yada. But as I sat there on that gurney, I thought, holy shit. Okay, you have to be able to do something. Life has to be more than this. This is not fun.
Yeah.
And it was this huge aha. And the paramedic said to me after, he goes, what's going on? What's wrong? I said, what do you mean? He said, I don't know, you're smiling. I can't even begin to tell you what's going on. And after getting out of the hospital, I was out of the hospital the same day. I had massive, soft tissue injuries that just meant I had to be off my feet for a while. Been there, done that before. That's the best damn thing that ever happened to me, was being hit by the big, huge man. The headline in the Citizen, the Ottawa Citizen paper, was Orleans granny run down by road rage man. So any thought of lack of shame was gone at that point. But what I did was I got into reading everything I could get my hands on. The Four Agreements, the Ninth Insight, every book I could find. I ended up with Esther Hicks and Katie Byron and all these people and all these things that said, I'm the captain of this ship. I get to decide. And buck up, little sailor, you got to do stuff right. And I ended up finding a spiritual mentor by 2004. And my son has dubbed her the holistic missile because she got right to the point and fixed me. And I still call myself a functional junkie, but I only take 15 milligrams of morphine a day. The rest of my pain I manage with meditation and visualizations and gratitude, a whole lot of gratitude, because there is so much to be thankful for. Even with all the other stuff, and it's not that things don't happen that are not great, but the fact is, if you are grateful for all the things that do happen that are right, you can kind of, when you weigh it, the gratitude outweighs all the crap. I have 5 wonderful grandchildren. I have 2
Aw.
children. My daughter has mental illness that we've only come to light in the past 6 years. And yet, we are grateful that they are all alive. For the most part, they're healthy. They are enjoying life, and I get to watch them grow up,
Yeah.
which for me is incredible. My husband and I have been married for going on 44 years.
Wow.
Yep, he got damaged goods, and as I said to him then, no receipt, you can't take me back.
No exchanges. That's what I used to
No
say about my
exchange,
adoption. There's no returning.
no returns, no exchanges, you don't have a receipt.
Yeah.
So, all that to say, when I finally realized, I didn't tell anyone my story till 2013, and people said, like, holy moly, like, when did, where, how? Nobody could ever finish a sentence.
Yeah.
When I tell them what happened, I spoke on stage for the first time, and it was terrifying because people were crying and coming up wanting to hug me after, and it was so overwhelming. And I was just concerned. I didn't want to hurt people. I don't know if that sounds weird, but it's a pretty horrific story. There's a lot of crap, but I'm past that. Like, things are good, and I'm doing my best to make them better.
That's such an achievement. Like it's just, my face just keeps going like, holy shit, are you serious? Again? Like, oh my God, that's just wow. And I'm like pretty medically knowledgeable, so like those are like incredibly serious injuries to be recovering from, and I can totally understand how it's a lifelong issue you have to manage, and that's horrible, but I'm so glad that you're, managing better and
Oh my God,
able
yeah.
to manage,
Gratitude will get you to the moon and back. No matter where you are in life, no matter how bad things get, okay, there are things to be grateful for. I'm grateful in the morning when I take a long time to roll over because that can be a challenge, but I'm breathing. When my feet hit the floor, I feel the floor. That's
right?
pretty
Yeah,
damn awesome.
yeah,
Okay. Now, I am not elegant in my walking, and I can't ski anymore. I can't do a lot of things, but I can do a lot of other things.
right, yeah,
And I can try to do even more because there's nothing wrong with trying. The fact,
absolutely.
yeah, the fact is, I have a friend who told me that when you fail, you need to have a fail abrasion because failure is what allows you to succeed and be grateful for succeeding because humans are comparative. We can't know tall unless we know short. You can't know success unless you know failure. And that's where we are. I'm 68. I plan on being here for a long time.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. You deserve it after all you've been through. My God.
Well, thank you. And sorry to spring all that on you.
No, that's okay. That's what we're here for. As an open platform, and you just, it's very rarely people can shut me up, and you manage to do so while I listen. So very well done.
Well, thank you. Not my intent was not to shut you up.
No, it's just so inspiring, and I think, it's so helpful to other people, when we share our stories that are so powerful that we are now the light, where, we used to be lost alone in the darkness, and we're now the light for other people. And, this, knowing all you've been through and how you've, come out of it and turned out, I mean, it gives so much hope to other people who are in a dark place, that there is more than just the darkness.
I often say my answer for, like, there are bad days. Okay. There are absolutely bad days. I allow myself to wallow every so often, but I
Yes.
put a time limit on it. And, one thing I really want to say, because I want people to understand, suicidal ideation doesn't go away. Okay. I just manage it well now. And I say, I have always, since I was 6 years old and saw Pollyanna, I have played the glad game. Come hell or high water, I have always played the glad game. So I'm like 50% suicidal ideation and 50% Pollyanna. And those two, they are chalk and cheese. They don't really
Mm-hmm.
get along, but it's kind of cool because with my bent sense of humor, I make them both work for me.
Yes.
And that's what, if your audience, I want you to take what you have, all the pieces of you, whether you like them or you don't like them, you have to love them because they are part of you that helped you get through something, whatever that might be. And without them, you wouldn't be who you are now. I don't think I'd have any empathy if I hadn't gone through all that. And somebody once asked me, "Oh my God, like, what would you take out if you could go back and not have?" I said, "Nothing, because I wouldn't be who I am now."
Yes. Yes.
I have empathy. I understand that people hurt. Okay. It deeply moves me, people's stories. And I'm able to do my podcast and give back to Andrea, because another piece of that suicide zen forgiveness is I want people to say their name. The people that we lose to suicide, to addiction, to mental health, say their name. Don't relegate them to the dark or the closet because other people think things are shameful. No, let's end that shame. Let's say their name, like I say Andrea and Brian and Margaret and Emma.
Absolutely. It's I feel almost an obligation for having spent so much of my life in a suicidal, framework. I feel like my obligation to others was to turn my trauma into something helpful, was and that was not only cathartically healing for myself, but to be able to share my story and know that so many other people, you have this a ripple effect on people that we don't even see. And, your podcast has definitely done that. It's, I've probably helped and affected thousands and thousands of people.
Well, I sure hope so, because for me, if just one person chooses life, then that's good enough for me. I would like it to be
Absolutely.
so many more, because I want us to stop this. I want people to talk, people to be able to turn to someone and say, you know what? Today, I just don't want to be here.
Yes.
Let's talk it out. You know,
Yep.
one of the other things I find useful when I'm having a bad day is go have a nap, okay? Or go to sleep at night, because here's the wildest thing. When you have a nap or when you go to sleep, or close your eyes for even 20 minutes, that those first, I don't know, 15, 17 seconds when you're waking up, you're a blank slate. There's nothing. You can be, do, say whatever you want. You can start fresh every single time. Those 17 seconds, if you make the choice, to be different, to do different, to say different, then you can rewrite your future going forward.
Absolutely. And it's so important. And I always push, like when I'm talking to people, I'm like, I want suicide to be a dinner conversation. I want you
Yeah.
to ask your kids, how was your day at school? How's sports going? Have you been having any mental health issues? Have you felt suicidal lately? Like,
Yeah. And,
just
and
talk
for
and be
children,
open.
yeah, for children, we need to use child friendly language, okay, and work on, do you have bizarre thoughts, or did you have any odd thoughts we should talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel bad about yourself today?
Yeah,
That kind of, we have to tailor the language to the age. And
absolutely.
I didn't see that early on, but a friend of mine, David Amerland, explained to me that it's not just our thoughts, it's not just training our brain, it's feelings. No one explains to us about feelings. And all feelings are valid. All feelings. There
Yes.
aren't good feelings or bad feelings from that standpoint. We have to understand that sometimes a motivating factor can be anger. Anger can be really useful.
Yes.
It can push you to excel. So it's not just joy and happiness and those things that work. Sadness can propel us to where you and I are today doing these podcasts.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so important to know that it doesn't matter how you're feeling. Your feelings are, it's okay to feel how you're feeling. They're
Mhm.
valid. And, if you choose to keep them to yourself, that's one thing. If you choose to express them, someone is going to understand because you are truly never alone in those types of thoughts.
Absolutely. And reach out. If
Yes.
you're feeling some kind of way, reach out. It doesn't matter whether it's somebody else on the street, it's somebody in a store, it's a neighbor, it's in your family. Reach out, because honestly, more people than you know are willing to listen.
Absolutely. That letter that I wrote that went viral, like
Yeah.
and that was 8 years ago, and I still get, 2 to 3 emails a week from people,
Yeah.
and I make sure I answer everyone because everyone at some point in time is just reaching out, even to a random stranger. They
Yeah.
just want to feel supported, and feel
Feel
validated, and
heard.
feel heard.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And if I can provide that so easily, why wouldn't I?
I'm so there with you.
Right? Like and it can literally save a life. Actively listening can save a life. And it's something that everybody can do,
Yeah.
right? It takes some
Absolutely.
training, but it's your own training. It's mental training to,
Yeah.
listen, not to speak,
Yeah. Yeah.
listen to hear.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that quite often people are listening to see where they can break in to put their thought in the conversation.
Yes.
When someone brings their heart to you, their soul to you, it's not a conversation. They just want you to listen.
Yes.
So offer that. You've
People
got two
love.
ears, only one mouth.
Yes, exactly. And people often ask me, well, what do you tell them or what advice do you give them? I'm not here to give you advice.
Yeah,
Absolutely. If you ask for it, I will suggest some things that may be helpful for you. But my main role is just to hear you and to let you know that you are heard, you are loved, you are valued, and you are supported.
yeah. Because listening isn't about speech.
Yes, exactly.
The
Exactly.
listener doesn't need a mouth.
Yes.
You just need to listen.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, I think you're doing a fantastic job with your podcast going, on for so long. And I feel blessed that I've been able to be on it twice. I'm looking forward to the next episode coming out. I just adore you as a person, and
Aw.
I do. I think you're, and your husband's great too. I think he's so funny on his social media. He's so great too. So, like I'm glad you are where you are, and I'm glad you have, a good family, love and support around you, and the ability to manage your pain and everything, and then still come out the other end as a shining light. Like you're like a lighthouse, right? You just shine your light everywhere, and then it helps who it helps. It helps the boats that are around that are lost at sea. And I think that's,
Absolutely.
it's such a great accomplishment, and I'm super proud of you.
Thank you so much. That is
Of
so
course.
very, very kind.
Of
I
course.
am I am loving the fact that we are in the same space. I think you're absolutely marvelous, and I love the fact that we're connected. And yes, my husband's very invested in you as well.
Yeah, he's such a sweet guy. I never know who I'm talking to on social media. So sometimes I'm like, hi, Mr. Elaine.
He calls himself that a lot these days.
That's so funny. It's so awesome. I love it. I appreciate your time. I hope we can do this again. Um, yeah, it would be great. We can just pick a topic this time, and let's just hack away at suicide.
Absolutely. Oh,
I would
that's
love
good.
to
I
do,
like that.
yeah, I would love to do that.
Do
Just
that.
rip it apart and, try and do it so often that it's going to become habitual and normal for, what we want is the majority of society.
Absolutely. I think it's important we bring empathy to suicide loss
Yes.
because that has been missing for such a long time.
hmm
You know,
For me, I believe that empathy is learned through experience, whereas compassion and sympathy are something different. You are empathetic once you have gone through something.
absolutely, absolutely, because it gives you an understanding of pain.
Yes.
You can have some form of compassion for anyone,
Yeah.
but empathy is just deeper. I think it's deeper.
Yes. Absolutely. And it's such a great connection when connect with other empaths because,
Yeah,
we all basically have the same commonality of being an empath and
that's
the
true.
things that come with that, right? So,
Absolutely.
again, thank you for your time, my dear.
Well, thank you
I
for having me.
I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you, and we will definitely talk again. I will post all your links and the show notes, and I will keep you posted. And of course, we'll stay in touch in the meantime.
We absolutely will. Thank you so much. Everything you said, it is mutual. It is absolutely mutual.
Thank you,
So
my dear,
you and your audience make the very best of your today, every
and
day.
you too. You take care of yourself, okay?
Bye.
Okay, bye, honey.
Thank you for listening to the Mental Health Raw and Open podcast with your host, Jody Betty. If you enjoyed today's show, please give it a like and don't forget to smash that subscribe button. And if you appreciate the work I do, why not buy me a coffee? Details in the show notes. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Dorian Kent and produced by Jody Betty and Dorian Kent. This has been a Raw and Open production.